When it comes to self-organization, as we previously talked, the most important concept to know is that usually self-organization happen without any blueprint or without any global information. So there is no one basically central control within the system that organizes system based on the global information and based on this blueprint. Even when we have leaders and when we have creator, this doesn't necessarily mean that there is a, and even when we have a central control system, if that central control system doesn't have any access to the global information and blueprint, we cannot really attribute the organization to that central control system. So if we look at the various animal groups in nature and insects and animals, we can find different levels of centrality. And here the centralization is not necessarily about leadership. I should clarify that when we talk about central control system, it doesn't necessarily mean the creator or the leader, if there is a creator, if there isn't, and they might be a leader or not, but still the system is self-organized. But if there is a central control system that is having access to the global information, knowing the blueprint and putting the components of the system in place, then that's not a self-organized system. So we have various levels of centralization in nature, and this centralization is not necessarily the central control system. It can be a leadership or somebody taking control. For example, we have some highly centralized systems or organizations or structures, such as wolf pack, that an alpha female or an alpha male, usually alpha female, is a lifetime leader of the group, and most of the group members follow the leader. But again, this is a form of self-organized system, because just following the leader doesn't necessarily mean the structure is appeared because leader has decided to put who where. But compared to complete self-organization system without any centralized structures or leaders, this is more centralized system. Then in the moderate centralization level, we have these groups of chimpanzee. Now, depending on the species, they might have a leader. Usually the leader is the male in this case. And there are some species without any leader, in fact. And there are some other species that it doesn't matter if it is female or male, rather it is the most cunning member become the leader of the group. And then we have some low levels of centralization, like the herd of horses, that in any given day, wild horses, a couple of horses, 2, 3 horses become the leader of the group over the time, over the day, and they lead the group, and then the day after that maybe there are some other horses becoming leader, and this is very low centralization. And then compared to these, we have some complete self-organizations, for example, honeybees, ants, schooling fishes, and also flock of birds. All of these are examples of non-centralized, self-organized systems that basically there is no leader. So in term of ants and bees, even the queen is not the leader. Rather the responsibilities of the queen is different. Producing offsprings or just simply holding the entire group together is the role of the leader, rather than organizing the nest or deciding how to do and what structure to take. And one of the best examples to show this, the self-organization, or basically introduction to a self-organization, I believe is the colony of ants, that is a very interesting, they have very interesting way of communication. For example, in case of the honeybees, they wiggle, they have this dance that they inform each other, they communicate through that dance, letting each other know, let's say, where to go, what to do. And that dancing is the way of communication. For ants, it's a little bit different. They have the touch, and also mainly they communicate with their antennae. They contact each other with their antennas, touching each other's antennaes, and then also they have a chemical way of communication by leaving a trail of pheromone. They also help each other in self-organization simply by coming together in pairs and basically communicating in local level. They create this organized system or structure that is very successful in foraging, in defending the nest, or basically maintaining the nest, cleaning it, and all the other roles that they take. And that diversity of roles is also carefully organized with this self-organization that they have. Just to show how this basically self-organization works, I want to basically play a video of these ants. So this is a TED talk you can watch for yourself, but for now, let me play a short part of this video. It's not a TED talk; it's a TED education video.
Again, so how do worker ants decide what to do and when? Well, they don't really. Although they have no methods of intentional communication, individual ants do interact with one another through touch, sound, and chemical signals. These stimuli accomplish many things, from serving as an alarm to other ants if one is killed, to signaling when a queen is nearing the end of her reproductive life. But one of the most impressive collective capabilities of an ant colony is to thoroughly and efficiently explore large areas without any predetermined plan. Most species of ants have little or no sense of sight and can only smell things in their vicinity. Combined with their lack of high-level coordination, this would seem to make them terrible explorers. But there is an amazingly simple way that ants maximize their searching efficiency, by changing their movement patterns based on individual interactions. When two ants meet, they sense each other by touching antennae. If there are many ants in a small area, this will happen more often, causing them to respond by moving in more convoluted, random paths in order to search more thoroughly. But in a larger area with less ants, where such meetings happen less often, they can walk in straight lines to cover more ground. While exploring their environment in this way, an ant may come across any number of things, from threats or enemies to alternate nesting sites. And some species have another capability known as recruitment.
So basically, as explained in this video, we see that in ants, basically they have different responsibilities. Some ants take role of the maintenance, taking care of the nest, basically. Some ants defending the nest. Some ants are foraging food and collecting food. And interestingly enough, this diversity of role is also under the impact of self-organization. So whenever their antennae are touching, they realize that, for example, if the ant that is coming to the nest with food, they are like little statisticians. They start counting the number of antennae they communicate, and when more frequency of food they sense, they change their role and become forager and start collecting food. But whenever a danger is happening, that kind of information become more frequent, and then all become take guardians of the nest. And if they have heavy duty of cleaning the nest after a storm, basically again high frequency of ants with the needs to clean the nest results in more ants becoming the maintenance basically workers. So they change their roles. This diversity of roles is dynamic, and this is a result of that self-organization, which is following a very simple local information interacting between two ants. And now when you take this to a larger group of ants, in fact larger groups of ants, larger colonies, have better communications and have better labor division because of, you can pause the video and think why larger colonies are going to have better division of work. But the answer, the hypothesis is that because there's more information. So when we have larger communication, we have more of those interactions, numerosity. We have more of those interactions and therefore better information regarding food, regarding maintenance of the nest and things like that. So with this simple ant example, we can see the impact of numerosity of the number of ants, numerosity of the interactions, the diversity in role and labor division, and self-organization, obviously. But it's not that. Even they make better decisions, which in a later case result in higher synergy, which again is the result of self-organization. And in order to understand that part better, there's a very interesting experiment that I want to share with you. And again, this video you can find on the internet, Ants on the March, but I'm going to play a short part of this video again.
So the diamond ship bridge experiment, it's a very famous one in ants. When you give a choice to the ants, if you give them a choice between two paths or completely similar, they would always choose one path because they lay pheromone on the way to the food source and on their way back. So the question we were asking in doing this experiment is what happens if there's traffic jam, if the density is so high that you can't really take one branch. So we just decrease the width of each branch from like 1 centimeter to 1.5 millimeter. And what we observe that if you decrease the width of the branch and start to take the second branch. So they use the two branches at the same time. To avoid the traffic jam, if an ant comes at the fork between the two branches, if she wants to choose one branch and she encounter another ant in front of her, she would collide with it and would change direction and take the second branch. So in fact, there were no traffic jams. That was a surprise because we really like 1.5 millimeter is really, really narrow.
So interestingly, as you can see, this numerosity in number of ants and interactions and the self-organization happened as a result of that also impacts their decision making. First of all, when there's two paths, they select the shorter one. In this case, again, going to the example of foraging food, when one ant find the food and bring part of that food to the nest, leaves a trace of pheromone that other ants can feel and sense and follow, and that way they organize this chain of ants that is continuously going and foraging food from the same source. And this pheromone dissipate over time. So if one ant bring the food and longer time passes from that passage, the pheromone is already gone. So again, they start moving randomly. But if they continuously go back and forth, this pheromone trail remain on the path, and then ants can find the path, and as a result of this, they become better decision makers. First of all, if they have two paths that they are going to select, they usually select the shorter one because of the pheromone persistence in the longer one is lower and the pheromone is dissipating, while in the shorter one the pheromone is stronger. And this is kind of how they encode memory and how they learn from the history of the system. So the memory and the impact of history is also clear here. Also, they obviously you're going to see some ants randomly wandering in the other path, but the majority is going through the short path. But when it comes to the traffic of the number of ants in one path, if they realize that the one of the paths, no matter short or longer, is taken, is basically it's a congested path, they start using the other one again because of the same interactions they have in local level. They don't have this bird eye view of the path to see which one is more congested, which one is not. They just simply find the overcrowded based on their antennae touching each other, and they realize that they should take the other path because the other one is closed and it's overcrowded. And this kind of make them very smart in terms of decision making, while they don't have the central nervous system in a sense that we as human beings have, and we can think. They never can think like us, but still they are showing a very intelligent behavior collectively because of the self-organizations. And as I said, this also adds to their synergy. The best way to show that is actually to show it to you in form of basically a simulation. In this simulation, we are going to explore the behavior of the ants, basically, colony. And let me zoom in. It's a very simple simulation with 3 parameters to set. One is the population of ants. In this case, we are going to set that to a smaller number. Let's say maybe something like 100 or something close to that. And then we have a diffusion rate and evaporation rate. For now, let's keep both of them 0 so that the ants, actually I'm going to maximize the evaporation rate and minimize diffusion rate. So there is no pheromone basically. If I set up this system, this middle one is the ant colony, and then this is the close source of food on the right hand. And then we have a further away source of food in lower left, and the furthest away source of food in the upper left. So if we start this system, ants are going to randomly go around this world, and then they are going to basically encounter food and bring some part of that food back home. And as you can see, all 3 sources are being consumed. Obviously, the shorter one is being consumed faster, the one that is closer to the nest compared to the other one. So I'm going to speed up the process. And as you can see, they are randomly going around, and sometimes they encounter the source of food, sometimes they don't. So almost 2 sources are completely finished. We still some of the last source, and okay, and the last one is also done. Now I stop the simulation. As you can see, the ticks of time that is counted is 2142 ticks. So 2142 time unit has passed, and these ants collected all the food or foraged all the food. And you can see here that basically the one that finished shorter was the one that was closer, and then the other one, and then the other one, and they are kind of linearly going down. Maybe this is less linear compared to this one, but they're kind of all 3 kind of linearly reducing because of this random movement of the ants. Obviously, this is not the scientific way of doing the calculation to decide that it takes 2142 because it's a random process. We should run this process maybe 1,000 times and then take the average, which is not very time consuming with today's computational power we have. Obviously, since this is manually, I'm not going to repeat it 1,000 times, but there are ways of programming it so in a matter of seconds you can run this model 1,000 times, take the average, and you will know what's the average number of time ticks it take when they are foraging as randomly moving around. Now for the new setup, I want to reduce the evaporation rate to something like maybe 9 or 10, and then increase the diffusion rate to something like 50, 45 or 50. That's I believe is good enough. So this is the diffusion rate and evaporation rate for our experiment, the new setup we are going to have. And then I'm going to have the same number of ants. I keep the number of ants the same, and then start the new setup, and let's start this process and see how it works. In this case, as you can see, the pheromone trail they are leaving bring the other ants to the collecting of the food. First of all, they start, although they bring from all sources, but first they focus on the closest one, and then one further away, and finally they move to the last one, which was the furthest away. And so as you can see, they are making much better decisions. That's the first thing. So they make the decision by the distance, which they have no idea how much is. Plus, they finished in 1,000 ticks, almost half of the previous time it took for them in this way of collecting the food. And as you can see, the pattern that the food is consumed was foraged is completely different. These two are finishing much earlier, and then the last one, which also follows a complete different pattern. None of these are anymore similar to any linear one, especially the last one. And this shows how ants use a self-organized mechanism basically to enhance their synergistic behavior, and collectively they do the task in much better time, making better decisions and finishing the task in much earlier fashion because of that synergic behavior they show.